What's up, YouTube? Tonight's video is the next chapter in my top 10 series, and today I will be looking at the best arcade compilations released for home consoles. So just a couple qualifiers on this. I'm not looking at compilations of home console games that were released for later home consoles, but strictly arcade compilations, games that originated in the arcade. I also will be not only just looking at solo releases, but if they are part of a series, I will praise the whole series as part of the top 10, and I'll show you each piece that makes up the series. So with those qualifications said, let's go ahead and get started, and I will start off with number 10. One thing you will notice about these is most of these are going to be released, actually all of them are released on disc-based systems, and that's really because arcade compilations didn't come into their best years until the disc-based systems allowed more capability for more games to be released on certain arcade packs. So I just wanted to throw that out there too, in case you were looking for some cartridge-based compilations. The first one of these is the Atk Collection, and this is a exclusive release for the Japanese PS2. Atk was a pretty obscure developer that mostly made Neo Geo games in their past. And this is an interesting compilation of 5 of their releases. You get 3 of the games released in their Ninja series, which is Ninja Combat, Ninja Commando, and Ninja... I forgot the other one. Anyways, one of them is a fighter, one of them is a beat 'em up, and one of them is a top-down run and gun game, which is probably my favorite of the 5, or of the 3. And you also get a fighter named Gongon, and then the one completely random entry that is included in this compilation is Twinkle Star Sprites, which is a interesting puzzle shooter hybrid. I really like this compilation. It was a late release for the Japanese PS2, so I don't think they made a whole lot of these. But for uniqueness, this one made the list, and I definitely can recommend it if you're looking for something of a more offbeat arcade compilation. So, very cool. Atk Tamashi, this one is known as, number 10. Number 9 is another more offbeat one, and this one I really was surprised that got released for the system it got released on, and that is the Data East Classics compilation for the Nintendo Wii. This one has some better-known games, such as Burger Time, Bad Dudes, Caveman Ninja, which is Joe and Mac, and Heavy Barrel on it. But it also has a lot of really obscure games that most people in America probably barely even played in the arcade. So this was a welcome surprise when this came out for the Wii. I actually bought this on release. I had a really hard time finding this game. It was only released, I think, at a couple retail stores in town, because I didn't see this very many places at all. But definitely do like this compilation, and I can recommend it. And if you're looking for something unique for your Wii, this is definitely one to pick up. This is actually one of the more valuable Wii games, but I think it's worth every penny. So number 9 is the Data East Arcade Classics compilation. Number 8 is another arcade compilation that I don't really think gets talked about too much, but if you go by strictly hours I've played this game, I would say this ranks very highly, and that is the Buster Brothers collection for the PS1. This is a very cool compilation of 3 Capcom games in the Buster Brothers, or Pang as it's known in Japan, series. So with this compilation you get the original Buster Brothers, Super Buster Brothers, and Buster Buddies. Buster Buddies is probably the most unique of the 3. But all 3 of these are very fun, addictive, bubble-popping action, and I really enjoy these. The only thing I would say about this one is I do own the arcade version of Mighty Pang, which was the 4th game in the series, and if for some reason they were able to include that on this package, it would be perfect. But that said, I'm still very happy that this exists. So number 8 is the Buster Brothers collection. Number 7 is a duo of releases, and with these you get 40 games, approximately, by this developer, and that is the Capcom Classics Collection Volume 1 and Volume 2. I happen to own these on the Xbox, but these do exist on the PS2 as well. I just dropped my camera, give me a second there. But both of these are excellent compilations, and like I said, you get about 40 games total. Mix of Capcom's best shooters, action games, fighters, pretty much all of it. The only thing I'll say about this is they do have a great quantity of releases on them, but I really don't have a huge emotional connection to any of the games on these collections. I guess I didn't play any of these as a child, so they're very cool. I like playing them in retrospect, but they don't have that deep tie that some of these other compilations have. So number 7 is the Capcom Collection, Capcom Classics Collection Volume 1 and Volume 2. Number 6 is another arcade compilation that I don't really think many people talk about, and that is the Raiden Fighters Aces collection for the Xbox 360. This was actually an early release on the 360, and it has 3 Raiden Fighters arcade games: Raiden Fighters Jet, Raiden Fighters Raiden Fighters, Raiden Fighters 2, and Raiden Fighters Jet. Man, I'm a mess today. All 3 of these are excellent arcade ports. They're great shooters, very addictive, and all 3 arcade boards were extremely expensive, so this is a great, cheap way to own these in your collection. Actually, I bought this before I even owned a 360. I was so excited that this got released, and I actually would take this over to a friend's house that had a 360 just so I could play it. As far as I'm concerned, as far as the early 360 games go, this was the only one I was truly interested in, and because it is an exclusive for the 360, it is definitely a must-own. So number 6 is Raiden Fighters Aces. Number 5 is another trilogy of arcade ports, and I did put these together just because they were released around the same time and because they all focus on a single developer. So these are 3 arcade collections released Japan only on the PS2, and they focus on the shooter developer Psycho. So the first one of these is the Strikers 1945 1 and 2 collection. Both of these are excellent ports of the well-known Strikers games. You can get these in many other formats, but I do like the clean presentation of this. Taito actually handled the publishing of these 3, and I think they did a really nice job with the packaging and artwork on these. So this is considered Volume 1 of the Psycho collection. Volume 2 is Sengoku Blade and Sengoku Ace, which is a trilogy or a duo of people shooters, as they're known. One of these is horizontally presented, and one is vertically played. Both of these are very cool, have really nice artwork on them. And the final one in this Psycho collection, this is Volume 3, is Soul Divide and Dragon Blaze. This one, interestingly enough, is probably my favorite. Soul Divide is actually probably their worst game that they did develop, but Dragon Blaze is so good that it really makes this one worth it. And Dragon Blaze was never ported to home consoles any other way that I'm aware of, so this is what makes this one essential. And that is why I consider this to be the number 5 best arcade compilation series that you can buy for a home console. So number 4 is a compilation that you can get on several systems. This is available on the Wii, the PSP, and then this version, which is for the PS2. And that is Metal Slug Anthology. So this is a great way to own all 6 of the Metal Slug arcade release games. Number 6, this is actually the home exclusive version of that. This game, again, is also available on the Wii, but I do prefer it on the PS2. The Wii version, for some reason, has some kind of wonky control schemes that they added, and just it's really confusing to get set up correctly. So I just go with the PS2 version just due to convenience. It's a lot easier to just pick up and play, and a very excellent way to have the Metal Slug games. So number 4 is Metal Slug Anthology. Which brings us to number 3, and again, if we're talking about games that I've put a ton of time into, this one would rank very, very high. And that is the Sega Ages collection on the Sega Saturn. This has arcade ports of Space Harrier, Afterburner 2, and most importantly, Outrun, which is quite possibly my number 2 favorite arcade game of all time. And as far as I'm concerned, this Sega Saturn version of this, the artwork on it is awesome due to working designs, has their typical foil and reflective artwork on it, but other than that, the Outrun port on this is excellent. Sega actually released Outrun on other consoles. You can play it in Shenmue and Dreamcast, and there was a Sega Dreamcast collection that has it. I think there's a couple other ones as well. The one thing that makes this the definitive version, though, is it still has the licensed Ferrari Testarossa in it. If you play some of those later versions, like on the Dreamcast, they actually edited the character car to be a more generic-looking thing because I think Ferrari complained. So that alone makes this the version to own. It actually has a lot of really cool configurable options. You can add more traffic, change some of the music, settings, things like that. and speed up the game, make it 60 frames per second. It's really an excellent version of Outrun. I don't necessarily like the other two games as much, but they are presented just as well, so if you're interested in those, you can get those too. These were available on solo discs in Japan for the Japanese Sega Saturn, so you can also buy those if you don't want to pay the very expensive price that this game goes for these days. But overall, number 3 is the Sega Ages Collection for the Sega Saturn. Which brings us to number 2, and this one is a set of releases, and that is the Namco Museum collections for the original PS1. So I own the black label first prints of all 5 of these. I also own the Japanese Encore, which is part of the series. And the one thing I'll say about these is, yes, they do have some of Namco's biggest hits on them, but they always include some more obscure games. So this was Collection 1, has things like Pac-Man and Galaga on it, but it also has some weirder stuff like Bosconian and Toy Pop. Yeah, like I said, Toy Pop, very weird. The other thing I will say about the PS1 versions and why you want these versus the many, many different versions for other later consoles is these were the true Japanese-developed versions of these collections, and they have a full museum inside of them, a lot more history on the arcade releases, whereas the other ones were American assembled, and they're pretty much just ports of the games, some a little more sloppy than others, and they do not have all the extra history that you get with the original PS1 releases. So this is Volume 1. I'm going to go ahead and show you the rest of these. Volume 2 is one of my all-time favorites because it has Mappy on it, which is one of my all-time favorite arcade games. Also has cool ports of Xevious and some weirder stuff like Dragon Buster on it. Volume 3 has the big hits like Galaxian and Ms. Pac-Man. Also has Dig Dug on it. And then again, some weird stuff like Fozon you probably haven't played before. Volume 4, probably one of the more unusual ones, has Pac-Land for its Pac-Man game, has the shooter Ordyne on it, and it also has some weird stuff like the Return of Ishtar, and Assault, which is actually quite good. Then we have the final one for the US, Volume 5. This one has Dragon Spirit and Pac-Mania on it. Also has Metrocross, which is an unusual game, and Baraduke. Then we have the volume, the R volume, I guess you could call it, Encore. And this one has some really cool exclusives like Rolling Thunder on it, Motos, and Sky Kid. Those are all very cool games. So I always consider this one to be part of the series and definitely worth picking up if you want to own the set. But overall, number 2 is the original Namco Museum series on the PS1. Which brings us to my all-time favorite arcade compilation, and this again is a series. This is my all-time favorite arcade developer, period, which is Taito, and I've talked about Taito in pretty much all of my videos. I always make sure to give them a plug as my favorite game developer, and I'm really happy they're still with us today. But they released an excellent series called the Taito Memories series for the Japanese PS2, and these are 4 compilations with, I believe, 20 or 25 games each. So you're getting about 100 classic Taito arcade games. They have such a rich history of shooters, action games, fighters, puzzle games, you name it, Arkanoid, things like that. These also come with a interesting little art book that's kind of tacked onto the back of the package here. Gives you the history of all the games released, and pretty much goes up to about the year 2000 for arcade games. I'm going to go ahead and show you all these. This is the very first one. And we have Volume 2. Another great set of classic arcade Taito games. Then we have what's called Part 2, Volume 1. That's the green set here. Again, comes with the art book on the back. And finally, Part 2, Number 2. So overall, this is my all-time favorite arcade compilations. You really can't go wrong with these. There's so much fun to be had with this set, and you can also get these in slightly different US form as Taito Legends. There are only 2 of those released. They have games that were chosen from these, plus a few exclusives, so those are actually worth owning as well. But overall, this is the set of arcade classics that I play the most on home consoles, is this Taito Memories set. So please take a moment, leave me a comment, let me know what your favorite arcade compilations are for home consoles. I'm sure I missed a few. There's other ones I own in my collection, it's just these are my top 10 favorite. And I'd love to see what else is out there and make sure I haven't missed on anything. So thank you very much for watching. Please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, and have a great day or night wherever you are.